everyone, I'm Gary Rebholz and welcome to another Sony Creative Software live webinar. Over the years I've talked to a lot of people who want to use our software, our video editing software from the Vegas line, to create home videos, holiday videos, celebration videos of birthdays and so forth. And I've talked to a lot of people who haven't been very happy with the results they've been getting. So in this webinar, we're going to take a step back from what we normally do in looking deep at the features of the applications. And we're going to talk a little bit about what you need to do to create compelling home videos. Matt is my producer on the other end of the camera, and from time to time I'm going to ask him to do certain things with the camera so that we can demonstrate shot framing and various other techniques that you should be able to master and get familiar with so that you can shoot your own videos. Now, even if you're not a professional videographer, there's no reason you can't shoot nice looking video and make a compelling video in the end. I liken making a video to creating a birthday cake or baking a pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving dinner. If you have rotten eggs or spoiled pumpkin to put in your pie, it doesn't matter how good of a bakery chef you are. If you bake it, it's not going to taste very good. Same with video. If you have bad content going in or poorly shot content going in, doesn't matter how good of a video editor you are, you're going to end up with a product that you're not necessarily very happy with. So in this webinar for the next 30 or 40 minutes or so, we'll talk about some of the techniques that you need to know in order to make good video, compelling video. Matt, let's zoom out a little bit and introduce my dinner guests here tonight. I've got Whitney and Patty with me here. They've volunteered to help us demonstrate some of the techniques that we're going to be talking about throughout the course of the presentation. Now, in general, there are two ways you can approach making your holiday video. The first approach, you've probably all seen it, is you turn the camera on and you just shoot. And you shoot all day. And you shoot until you're out of tape or memory or whatever it is. And when you're done, you just have a big, long video shoot. Now, you can shoot like that, and you can put your family down in front of the TV and next year to watch that video. And you might have their attention for 5, maybe if you're lucky 10 minutes, and if they're polite for 12 minutes, before they get distracted and get bored. Even though it's their own family and the kids they love, the video is not very compelling. And so they get distracted and they get bored with it. So what we want to do is a different approach. We want to shoot compelling video, nice shots that are framed nice, that are lit nicely, and edit those together into a video that is compelling, that people will be interested in watching. So, to put together a video like this, the first thing you need to do is you need to do some prep work. Now, a pro videographer is never going to go out on a shoot without doing some preparation beforehand. And there's no reason that you, as an amateur videographer, shouldn't do the same thing. So Matt, let's pan down to my table here, where I've got my table full of goodies that I would normally bring on a video shoot. The first thing I've got is a checklist. Make yourself a checklist and follow it. Don't do this the night before your video shoot. Do it the month before or the week before. Just give yourself some time and put everything on the checklist that you're going to need in your video shoot. Now, there are a lot of things that are obvious, but some things that might not be so obvious. So a checklist is a great way to make sure you've covered everything. So let's just kind of go down my checklist here and see what I've got. First on my checklist is a video camera. Not going to get very far if you forget your video camera. So make sure it's on your checklist, even as ridiculous as it seems to try to to think that you have to have a checklist for a video camera if you're the videographer. Guarantee you, if you show up at grandma's and you don't have your video camera with you, it's not going to be as good of a day as you had thought it was going to be. So your video camera. The next thing you want to bring is a tripod or a monopod. This is a monopod right here. It's like a tripod. Everybody knows what a tripod is. But it's only got one leg. So it doesn't keep your camera as still as a tripod would, but it'll do a better job than you trying to handhold it. And we'll demonstrate a little bit later the importance of a tripod in keeping the camera steady. Spare batteries. Make sure you bring more than one battery because if you don't, you're going to regret it. You're going to run out of battery, and you're not going to be able to shoot any more video. A battery charger, the power cable for the camera. You could shoot off power anytime you're close enough to an outlet to plug in. That's a great idea. Extension cords. If you're shooting on a tape-based camera, bring some extra blank tapes. If you're shooting on a camera that shoots on memory card, like the EX1 cameras or EX3 cameras, bring some extra memory cards. Hard drive. If you're shooting on a hard drive camera, you might want to dump some of that footage off onto your external hard drive, your little portable hard drive like this one, and free up some more room on your camera. Let's see what else is on my list here. USB cables. And you might want to dump your footage from your camera onto your hard drive like we just talked about. You're going to need a cable to do that. So bring a couple extra cables. Pencil, paper, and a clipboard like I've got here. That enables you to have a hard surface all the time that you can write on and make notes if you need to make notes. A bag of clothespins and other clamp type, other types of clamps. So I just bring a bunch of clothespins. Binder clips make great clips for video shoots because they're sturdy, they're strong, and they come in different sizes. So binder clips are great. And I even usually show up with a couple of C-clamps because you just never know. All right, page 2 of my little list here. Let's see what else we've got on the table. It's always nice to have a small flashlight handy because you're not always in a great real lit situation, and you might need to be able to see something on your camera or whatever. Little flashlight makes a big difference. Here's a lens cloth. This is just a nice soft cloth that you can wipe the lens of your camera off so that if you get any dust or debris on it, you can wipe that off quickly without damaging the lens. You might want to bring something like a multi-tool. You know, these things are great just in case you've got a nut that you need to loosen or something, a screw that you need to tighten or whatever. A multi-tool comes in real handy for that. So that's just some of the things that I would suggest that you bring along on your shoot. Now, one thing that I don't have on my table here, and it's a good thing I have my checklist because I see it on the bottom of my checklist, is a camera utility bag, something to carry it all in. You probably don't have enough pockets to stuff all this stuff in it, so get yourself a nice carrying bag, and it doesn't have to be some fancy 4 cameras only bag, but just something that'll carry it all and protect it as you carry it from your house to the party. All right, so you've made your checklist and you've gathered all your things, and as you're packing up your bag and getting ready to go, you're just going down the list and checking them off. Now, one good tip is to put something that you need that day on the seat of your car the night before you leave. Right? Put it on the driver's seat of the car, whether it's your camera or a spare battery or a clamp, just something that's going to remind you that you have to bring all that stuff. And if you've walked out the door without your camera bag and without all your gear, you open the door of your car and there's the spare battery or whatever it is sitting there. That reminds you, and you won't leave without it. Okay. Another thing that I had on my table here, and Matt, you can just leave the camera where it is the owner's manual. Nobody likes them, but everybody should read them. Just take some time. They're really not as bad as they seem at first because usually they're in 4 or 5 different languages. So the portion that you need is usually just a few pages, but it's really a helpful read to go through your manual, know your camera. A pro is never going to show up to a video shoot without knowing how to use the camera. And if you show up at your video shoot and you don't know how to use the camera, well, you're going to miss little Jimmy coming in to Grandma's house and hasn't seen Grandma because they live in Pennsylvania or wherever. And there's the big moment where they meet and they hug and it's just beautiful, and you missed it because you didn't know how to use your camera. You don't want that to happen. So read your manual and make sure you know how to use that camera. Now, another thing to do, and this is another thing that I make a checklist for, is to plan your shoot. So I've got a checklist here that is basically a rough schedule of the day. So I've got 9 o'clock, I arrive early to set up. 10 o'clock, the other guests start arriving. 12 o'clock, the table gets set. 1 o'clock, dinner is served, and so on. Just a real rough a real rough outline of the day so that you just have your thoughts organized and you know what's going to be happening. And you're probably going to want to get shots of all those things. So I made it a checklist. I have check boxes and I just tick them off as I go along. Now, other shots, I've got another section of my list here called Other Shots Needed. We call this sometimes B-roll. And the other shots that needed can include B-roll, or it can include important shots, like, you know, Grandpa falls asleep in the recliner after dinner every year, right? And it wouldn't be a holiday video if you didn't include that. So you got that on your checklist so that you remember to shoot that shot. You know, the group playing charades or people cleaning up the dishes or whatever it is, put it on your list. Whatever's important to you and your family and that you know you want to make part of your holiday video, put it on your list. Just a whole series of shots that you can get. The B-roll list includes things, when we talk about B-roll, we're talking about things that are not necessarily part of the active part of the celebration. So for instance, you might want to take an establishing shot of Grandma's house as you come in the door. You go out to the street, take a nice shot of the leaves falling off the tree or the snow falling or whatever's happening that day, and take a shot of the front door of the house. Now you can use that shot at the beginning of your video to set the scene. Now everybody knows the video they're about to see is the holiday celebration at Grandma's house. So shoot an establishing shot. Other things that I have on my list, food on the table, snow falling outside, leaves blowing around, a calendar showing the date of the celebration. Just little things that you can cut in and out of your video just to add a little bit of interest, or sometimes to cover up mistakes in your video. If you have something happening in your video, let's say you want to use the audio that you captured, but the video that shot during that audio wasn't very good, you can always use a piece of B-roll to cut away to a different piece of video and use the good audio, and it helps you cover up mistakes. I had an uncle who was a carpenter, and one thing he told me was the mark of a good carpenter is not how well you can do something, it's how well you can cover up your mistakes. And that's the same with the video. If you make a mistake shooting, you have the B-roll and the techniques in the software, you can cover up a lot of mistakes that you made shooting. So shoot some B-roll and make a list of the shots you want to try to get. And my final list is a list of who's at the party. I've got a list of everybody that's going to show up, everybody that said they would show up. Maybe you put people that didn't say they would show up, but they might. And make a list of them. And then when you get a video of little Jimmy, check it off the list. That doesn't mean you're never going to shoot another scene with him in it, but at least you know now you've got him in at least one shot. So make a list and don't overlook knowing how to spell their names. If you're anything like me, I've got 20 nieces and nephews, and they've all got names that may or may not be spelled the way I expect them to be spelled. Perfect example, the name Sarah. Does it have an H at the end, or is it just end in an A? So things you might assume you already know, you might want to check up on. And if you plan to use the names of the people in the video, then you're going to want to know for sure that you have the spelling right. All right, so those are my checklists that I use. Other things that you might want to do. Recruit somebody to help. Teenagers are great for this. Somebody that's 12, 13, 14 years old, they love to help with technology. So get a hold of one of your nephews or one of your nieces and say, hey, look, I'm shooting the video. I really need somebody to help me organize things, to carry things, to help me with this or that. You really can benefit from having somebody at your side that can go get something or do whatever you need to do. And give them the camera once in a while and have them shoot you in the video so that when you get to the end, everybody, you don't have a video with everybody in it except for you. You don't want to be the guy who everybody remembers 30 years from now as, old Uncle Fred who just always had the video camera in front of his face and is never in any of the videos. So get somebody to help you and give them the camera once in a while. Okay, and finally, if there's anybody else there that has a video camera, you may be the official videographer of your celebration, but if somebody else happens to have a camera with them, coordinate with them and talk to them about what they're going to be shooting and how you can get their footage when you're done. That way you can get different angles, you can get yourself into the video a little bit more easily if somebody else has also got a camera, and so forth. And the same with whoever happens to have a still image, a still camera. If you've got people there, they're always snapping pictures. Those pictures are gold. You can use those pictures as B-roll. You can make a slideshow presentation out of those pictures. You can bring those pictures to life using the pan crop tools inside of Vegas Movie Studio Platinum. You can do all kinds of things with those still images. So don't overlook taking still images. And if you don't think that somebody's going to show up with a camera, then show up with your own and enlist an assistant to help you shoot with it. Now, one of the things that you can do beforehand, and you can do this, you can start this anytime, pay attention to Hollywood movies. When you're watching your next movie, don't watch it as a viewer, watch it as a budding director. Look at the video and see how did they frame that shot, where did they put the actors, what's the angle of the camera. All of those things that the pros use, you've got a wealth of teaching material at the video store. So just check out some videos. The next time, you don't even have to do anything special. The next time you're watching a video or watching TV, just pay attention to how the shots are framed and composed. And that'll give you a great education. Okay. Charge your batteries the night before you leave. You show up without batteries that have charge in them, you're sunk. So this is again where you might want to put that little reminder on the seat of your car, because if you have the battery in the den, in the back corner of the den plugged in, getting charged, and you go flying out the door with your camera bag, you might forget that the batteries aren't in there. They're off being charged. So make sure you put yourself a little reminder. Okay, and again, let's go back to the checklist. Before you walk out the door, the last thing you should do, go down your checklist and make sure you have everything together. All right, so that's kind of the preparation of shooting a quality video. Let's move into a discussion of actually shooting the video, framing shots and so forth. And for this, Matt, let's pull out a little bit and show my guests here. Now, I don't know why they get food and I get a vial, but you know what? I'm very happy to have a vial in front of me. But anyway, here's our table. We've got Whitney and Patty, and they're having a great time at the holiday celebration. One big happy family. So let's talk a little bit about shooting. And I'm going to kind of get up and do a little bit of moving around here while we demonstrate this. The first thing you need to decide is, are you going to shoot with your camera in full automatic mode, in full manual mode, or in some combination of those two? Now, some cameras, some of the consumer cameras don't really give you an option for full manual mode. So you're sort of going to be shooting in full auto mode. But if you have a camera that can shoot in manual mode, and you know it well enough because you've studied the manual as we suggested earlier, then you can get some real interesting shots with your camera in manual mode. But it also brings up some interesting challenges that you need to be aware of. One of those challenges is white balance. White balance is, simplistically, is teaching your camera what the color white looks like. So what I'm going to have Matt do is, Matt, zoom in on something like the back wall that's not white. And when you're in manual mode, a camera has a function called white balance check. And Matt can go ahead and push the button, Matt, and what the camera is doing is sampling what it sees and saying, well, that's what is the color white. Now, if we sample something that's not white, obviously when we come back out, our colors are all messed up. Whitney looks like she has sort of a yellow shirt on instead of a white cream shirt that she's got on, and their skin tones are bad, and just everything's kind of messed up. But if we use the white balance properly, I'm going to have Whitney hold up a white balance card in front of her face. It's right on the table next to you there. So all you need to do is have one of your subjects hold the white balance card up, zoom in on that white balance card, zoom in a little farther, Matt, and then sample that white. And you'll be able to see immediately when Matt samples it that the colors change. Okay, Whitney, thank you. Now when he pulls back out, everything looks good. Whitney's sweater looks a lot more natural, same color that it really is. The tablecloth looks the right color. Everything looks good. So white balance is an important thing to keep in mind if you're shooting in manual mode. Now, a lot of these things, like white balance, you do have tools in the Vegas Movie Studio HD Platinum product and Vegas Pro and so forth. You can fix some of those problems, but trust me, it's a lot easier to shoot it right in the first place than it is to try to go back and fix it later. So get it right the first time, and then you don't have to do the fixing. Now, another function that you can run into trouble with when you're shooting in manual mode is focus. If you're shooting in automatic mode, your camera has an automatic focus, and you don't have to worry too much about it. If you're in manual mode, a lot of cameras you can choose to be in manual mode but still be in automatic focus or manual focus. So Matt, let's switch over to manual focus once and go ahead and put the scene out of focus. So here we are with a badly focused scene. Now Matt could, with the shot framed like it is, go ahead and try to focus it, right? And he could probably get pretty close, but it's difficult because he doesn't see a lot of detail. So here's a little trick. Matt, go ahead and zoom way in on something that has detail, like maybe the collar of Whitney's sweater there. You zoom way in, and now you've got detail to focus on. Notice as he brings this into focus, notice you can see the thread of Whitney's sweater. You can see her hair nice and in focus. It's a lot easier to focus when you're in tight like this. Once you're focused, you can pull back out and frame your shot. And now you know your shot's in focus. Okay, next thing is lighting. Now, obviously we're in the studios here in our beautiful new building in Middleton, Wisconsin, and we have studio lights up around, but you're not going to have that. I mean, you're not likely to bring along a Lowell light kit when you go to Grandma's house for Thanksgiving dinner. So you have to work with what you've got, and you're going to have to keep a couple of things in mind. First thing you want to make sure is that you have even lighting, basically lighting from a couple of different sources. And you might, when you get there early and are starting to set some things up, you might have to talk Grandma into letting you move a lamp into a different part of the room where you need some more light or whatever. So let me show you what this would look like if we didn't have some even lighting. Matt, go ahead and turn one of the studio lights off for me. Okay, notice now how Whitney's, this side, Whitney's face is in shadow. She's got a dark shadow right underneath her chin. Patty's chest is deep in shadow, and the side of his face is deeply shadowed. We need some sort of a fill light to make this look a little bit better, unless you're going for that Meet the Beatles look, and those of you under my age probably don't know what I'm talking about, but if you're going for a dramatic effect, sure, you can break the rules. In fact, everything that I talk about, those rules can be broken. But if you're going for a nicely lit shot, Matt, go ahead and turn that light back on. You have a fill light, and now the shadow under her chin is knocked down a little bit. You can see on Patty's chest, his shirt is starting to pop out a little bit more. And just even lighting from a couple of different sides of the room will really help you get a nice looking video. Now another tip, and I'm going to kind of scoot over here and grab a light. Let's kind of go close in on Whitney there. This light is, pretend this light is a window, and there's sunlight coming in the back. If you've got your camera in auto iris mode and you're shooting into a light source like this, watch what happens when the sun turns on. Okay, now that's great if Whitney's in the witness protection program, but she's not. We want people to be able to see her in the video. So the lesson here is, do not shoot into a bright light. Do not put your subject in front of the window that has the sunshine blasting into it, because you'll have a real hard time making your video look nice if you're dealing with those kinds of lighting problems. Okay. In addition to lighting, you want to consider your audio. Now, all your video cameras are going to have a built-in microphone that you can capture the audio with. But some video cameras have an external jack that you can plug a different microphone into. And if you have a different microphone, a higher quality microphone that you can place somewhere strategic in the room and tie into your camera, you can get a much better audio experience than the camera audio. Also, when you're thinking about where you're going to put your microphone, whether it's an external microphone or the microphone on the camera, pay attention to what's going on in the room around that microphone. For instance, if the microwave is humming away and heating up the mashed potatoes, you don't want to be standing next to the microwave while you're shooting your video, because nobody will be able to hear anything that's being said. All they'll be able to hear is the humming microwave. So just be careful what's going on around you and what noises are being made around you when you place your microphones. Okay, one of the most common problems that people have with their video is that they don't use a tripod. Now, you can't use a tripod in every situation. If you're running around the house, trying to follow little Allison as she chases around the room and does all her crazy antics, a tripod is going to be difficult to manage, and you'll probably want to just have a handheld camera. But if you can use a tripod, it makes a huge difference. Right now, Matt has his camera tethered to a tripod, and we got a nice steady shot. Matt, go ahead and pull that camera off the tripod for a second. If he's off tripod, now hold it as still as you possibly can, Matt. Okay, even with him trying to hold it still, he's having a hard time, and especially if you're zoomed in closely, because as you zoom in, every little movement you make on the camera is magnified by the amount of zoom that you've gone on the camera. So no matter how hard Matt tries to hold it steady, he can't. And if I make him hold it steady for long enough, he's going to get tired, his arms are going to get tired, his shoulders are going to get sore, and video is just not going to look that great in the end. Now, go ahead and put it back on the stick, Matt. So now he's back on the tripod and things look good. Now, Vegas Movie Studio Platinum HD does have a video stabilization tool in it, and it works great. But again, just like I said earlier with the color balance, it's always better if you don't have to fix the mistakes, even if you can. So for those times when you have to use a handheld camera, you can use the video stabilization tools, and it's quite remarkable the way they can stabilize the video. But if you can shoot with a tripod, you just save yourself that much trouble. Now, I showed a monopod. Matt, come on over here. And a monopod is similar to a tripod. The camera goes on the top. It extends out so that you can hold it onto the floor. And this is sort of a cross between a handheld and a tripod. It gives you a sturdy structure to hold the camera, and all you really need to do is to steady it and point it. You get much less tired holding a monopod than you will trying to hold the camera freehand. And you could be pretty mobile with a monopod. So a monopod is a nice investment, and they're not that expensive. You can get them for a pretty reasonable price. Okay, let's go back to our dinner guests here. And put the tripod down, or the monopod down. Okay, let's talk for a second about framing a shot. Now, Matt, give me a sort of a medium close-up on Whitney here. Okay, so there's Whitney, and there's the shot that we have. Now, Whitney's a pretty girl, so that makes it a nice piece of video. That's fine, but it could be better. Notice that Whitney's shoulders are square to the camera, and that she's sitting right in the center of the video frame. Matt has her framed right in the middle of the video frame. We can make this shot more interesting in a couple of ways. First, Whitney, let's have you rotate your shoulders a little bit towards Patty, and then turn your head and look at the camera. Now that's a much more interesting shot. We've got some depth in the shot. Her shoulders are no longer straight onto the camera, and it just gives the shot more depth and more interest. Now, there's a rule, they call it a rule, that you can follow to frame shots interestingly. It's known as the rule of thirds. And basically with the rule of thirds, what you do is you divide your viewfinder up into thirds, both horizontally and vertically. And if you can imagine a tic-tac-toe board, that's what the rule of thirds kind of places. And I've got Matt, Matt has a little template he's going to put in front of the lens of the camera right now. And that is our tic-tac-toe board that sort of breaks our camera up into thirds both horizontally and vertically. Now, to make this shot more interesting, you've got 4 kind of major focal points in this shot, and 2 of them are more important than the other 2. So if I can get my hand in here and point to this point right here, this point right here, right here, and right here. In other words, the intersections of those lines. Those are your key focal points. And the 2 on the top are more key than the 2 on the bottom. So to make this shot a more interesting shot, what Matt's going to do is move the camera to place Whitney, who's the subject of our video, right on one of those intersecting points. Now, Whitney, I'm going to have you turn your shoulders again like you did earlier and look at the camera. Turn your head to look at the camera. Okay, so there is a much more interesting shot. Now let's set everything back to where it was. Matt, you take the template out, Whitney square off to the camera, and let's do the same thing without the template in the way so you can see what it really looks like. So the first thing we did is we had Whitney rotate a little bit. Now you may not be able to get your guest to rotate, but you can change your camera position to a more interesting position and get the rotation that way. We might not want to have her rotated quite that much, so maybe she comes back a little bit, just enough to give a little bit of depth. There you go. And now, Matt, reframe her so following your rule of thirds to put her up in that hot spot up there. And that's a much more interesting shot. Now, if we had in the background, if we had a nice lamp or a tree or a plant or whatever it is, you'd have some interesting things in the background and a nicely framed shot in the foreground. So that's your rule of thirds. And it's a very, very helpful rule, not only for when you're shooting video, but, by the way, also when you're shooting still images. Okay. Make sure that when you're shooting your video, you get a lot of good close-ups. Matt, pull the camera out so you can see the whole scene again. Okay. So here we are, we've got our whole scene, and this makes for a great establishing shot. So if you want to show the whole family and show what the table looks like and so forth, there's nothing wrong with shooting a shot like this. It's a great shot. But if you shoot your whole video like this, it's going to get monotonous after a while. So it really helps to come in tight and get some close-ups. So Matt, let's go ahead and come in close on Whitney. Okay, so get a few shots that are close. You might want to get even more extreme and come in and get a super close-up. You can do that as well, right? So it's up to you. You're the creative director here. You're the one that's shooting. Go ahead and use your imagination and shoot what you want. But get some close-ups. Make sure you get a lot of close-ups. Now, in order to get close-ups, you could do that in 2 ways. You can either walk closer to the subject with the camera, or you can use the zoom tools like Matt has been doing to make this close-up of Whitney. But that brings up another point. When you're zooming, one of the other most common mistakes people make when they're shooting their home videos is they're constantly zooming in and out and panning across the scene, and pretty soon you kind of need some Dramamine to get through the video. So let's show sort of a badly done move that goes from a close-up to Whitney to a close-up to Patty. So Matt kind of pulls out and he zooms and it's fast and he's zooming in and out and he can't quite get his zoom right and he's going in and out and he's moving. How many of you have seen videos like this? I know you all have. And it's obviously not good video. So Matt, let's go back over to Whitney. Nice close-up of Whitney. And now let's do the same thing in a more controlled manner. So what you might want to do if you need to do a shot like this is to do your zooming separately from your panning. If you noticed when Matt was doing that before, he was all over the board. He was zooming and panning at the same time. It was almost like Wayne's World. So what you want to do is be controlled with your movement. So first, Matt, let's pull out so you see more of the scene, so you get Patty in the picture. Now you've established that they're sitting next to each other. Now you can pan over to Patty nice and easily and put him in the frame and then zoom back in to get a nice close-up of Patty. So the key is controlled movement and not all this crazy zooming and panning and moving the camera around just sort of in a crazy, uncontrolled way. Okay, let's pull back out so you can see both of them. Another thing you might want to do, in fact, pull out so you can see me as well. Another thing we talked about earlier, if you have somebody else that's showing up with a video camera, that you can work with them, right? Another thing you can do to make your videos much more compelling is to get different angles. So for this whole shot, we've been shooting from out front. Matt's been shooting with the camera. But I happen to have a camera too. And if I shoot the scene from here, now I can't show it to you because I'm not tied into the system, but I have a totally different perspective from here than Matt has from out there. I've got a nice profile of Whitney, kind of looking over her shoulder, and a nice close-up of Patty. Now, if I had a camera that could do depth of field changes with the iris control and so forth, I could make Patty blurry and have Whitney in focus, or I could do a rack focus, which is having the front subject in focus and then switching to the back subject. You could do a lot of creative things that way. And just, even if you don't do any of that fancy stuff, even just having a different angle is a big help. Now, if you've only got one camera and you're the only guy, then you're going to have to move your camera to get those other angles. So keep angles in mind, and try to get some interesting shots from different angles. All right, one more thing that I want to say about setting up your shoots is keep your shots relatively short. Now, obviously we're doing a long presentation here, so we've done one long straight through shot. But at your celebration, you're going to have a lot of different things going on. You're going to have people over here maybe opening gifts, and people over here doing the dishes, and whatever else is going on. Instead of shooting for a really long time on one subject and just leaving it shoot and then panning it over to a different subject, turn the camera on and off. Remember, you don't have to catch every single minute of your celebration. There's no reason for it. What you need to do is capture the important points of your celebration. And that's why we had the shot list that we put together earlier. Because you've got all your important shots on your list. You can go through them, and then you're free to shoot whatever you want. And again, there's just no reason to shoot continuously. And if you do shoot continuously, it makes your job as an editor, when you get to the software, a whole lot more difficult. Okay, so hopefully some of those shooting tips will help. Now, we're sort of running out of time here, but I do want to pop into this software interface real quickly and talk about just a couple of issues in the software. So here I've got my Vegas Movie Studio HD Platinum, and I've got some footage here from my holiday. And I'm just going to drop some of these onto the timeline and talk about a couple of things. And as we said, we don't have a whole lot of time here, so we're just going to take a look at a couple of things that are big ones to think about. I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Notice that I have two clips on the timeline here. And notice, let me zoom out just a touch, that you have a tab in Vegas Movie Studio HD Platinum called Transitions. I'm going to open that Transitions tab, and let's move the focus of the window up to the Transitions window. You can see in the list on the left that you've got a whole list of transitions that you can use in your videos. You've got 3D blinds, 3D cascades, just all kinds of different things that you can use in your video. Now, if I could tell you one thing about transitions in your video, it would be this. Just because you can use all of these transitions in your video and put one between every shot of your video doesn't mean you should. Now, again, when you're watching your Hollywood movies, pay attention to the transitions between shots in those movies. You'll be surprised. You'll be very surprised at how few transitions are actually used in high-quality Hollywood movies. Now, we have these transitions in here because sometimes they're great. Sometimes they come in handy. But you don't want to overuse them. And if you do overuse them, you start turning your video from a classy production into something that's just sort of cheesy, for lack of a better word. So just be careful with your transitions. Zoom out a little bit here, and just as long as we're talking about it, I'll show you how to make a transition in the software. We just overlap the two pieces of video and drag the transition we want and drop it onto the timeline, or onto the transition area. And then we can control the transition however we want, if we want to change it. But again, remember this key phrase: just because you can use all of those transitions in your video between every shot doesn't mean you should. Use them judiciously, and you'll get some good mileage out of them. The same goes with video effects. Now, there are a whole lot of video effects that are included in Vegas Movie Studio HD Platinum. Some of them are very useful for color correction and correcting other sorts of problems, but some of them are special effects kind of effects, like the lens flare, for instance, or light rays. These are great effects, and they're a lot of fun. If I go ahead and put some light rays on my video down here, and then zoom out a little bit so you can see the screen, excuse me, you can see that we have an interesting light ray effect on the video. Well, it's interesting, but it may be a little bit overdone. Now, if you're going for some special effect, great, have at it. You can have a lot of fun with it. But you don't want to use something like that on every clip, and excuse me, and you just don't want to overdo it. So maybe we take that effect off, and instead put something a little more artistic on, like black and white. Maybe we want to make this scene a black and white scene. Now that's nice, and we could add some contrast and colors, some contrast and so forth to make the colors pop out a little bit, and just sort of add some interest to our video. And you can do a lot of those kinds of things to make your video more compelling and more interesting than it might have been. But again, you just don't want to overdo. You just don't want to overdo it all. All right, so I hope that we've given you some good tips to creating your video, that you enjoyed learning some of these tips, and that you didn't mind not poking into the software too much, because remember, you have to have the good footage going in order to get the good results coming out. So we will have this webinar available for on-demand playback shortly, within 2 weeks for sure, so that you can rewatch this, go through all the tips that we talked about, take your time learning them, and start applying them to your own videos. If you follow these tips, okay, you may not be Cecil B. DeMille right out of the gate, but you're going to make a much better video than if you don't follow these tips. So I hope that I've been able to help you make your holiday a little more enjoyable, and your celebration a little bit more festive, and your video a lot more compelling. So Matt, let's pull out and show Patty and Whitney one more time. And from our family to yours, we hope you have a happy holiday. And Whitney, pass the pumpkin pie, will you? Thanks. So long.